At school, Maddie sits on a side desk in the class, writing about other girls who are busy in their own drama. She then notices that all the girls in the class are copying her each move, starting from tucking a lock of hair behind their ears to crossing their legs. An anxiety attack triggered by this situation forces her to move out of the class, but she gets stopped by the teacher when she attempts to go out of the class. She makes an excuse to use the bathroom, but the teacher asks her to put her cell phone on the desk, which makes the perplexed Maddie rush out of the class and run toward the bathroom. Later, outside the principal's office, Maddie sits outside the room while her mother, Ellen Kim, talks to the teacher inside the room and explains to him the reason for her stress is her grief for her late father and their migration to a new place and school. The teacher understands that this drastic change in her life would be very difficult for her, and he would have taken care of it if he knew about it earlier. A flashback of Maddie's memories follows, where she is happy upon receiving a laptop from her dad, who is sitting on a support chair connected to IV lines and a heart rate monitor inside a hospital. Her happiness turns into disappointment and distress when she realizes that the laptop belongs to her mother and her father, asking her to improve her relationship with her mother, further confirming her suspicion that her father is going to pass away soon. She throws the laptop in a trash bin and expresses her anger, to which her father comforts her by saying that if he thought about dying, he would have given her his own laptop instead of her mother's. In the present, on her way back home, her mother asks her about her day, but she refuses to talk about it. Back at home, Maddie takes the stairs to enter her room and takes out a deep sigh on closing the door behind her. She plucks a USB drive into a computer and turns it on to see a message from her grandmother, who sends her the details about her day and asks her about hers in return. After taking a deep breath, she finally chooses to share about her life, but before she does that, she gets interrupted by an email with a picture of her edited in a way to bully her and mock her. A clear sign of severe depression can be seen when she then erases the message she typed to send her grandmother, and instead informs her that her life is going great at school. Being devastated, Maddie goes to her bed and hides inside the blanket to cry her heart out. That night, it is raining and lightning outside. Maddie wakes up to the notification sound on her computer. She gets up to check that and gets shocked by a message from an unknown sender asking her about that bullying email earlier by only using emojis. Maddie figures out that this anonymous sender only uses emojis to communicate, and tells her that he shares mutual feelings with her regarding that email. On asking about his identity, he replies with a ghost emoji and the chat disappears. In the background, the sounds of thunder and lightning outside the window make the scene more intense. Next morning, Maddie gets back to school in her usual routine, but something is not that usual today as later. In the class, Maddie notices tension building up in the class as all of her bullies start to turn against each other. Someone is messing up with their devices, turning friends into foes, but the question is who? Later in the bathroom, Maddie witnesses the girls fighting each other upon hacking the other's phone. Maddie gets back home, and just when Maddie finds out that he knows her mother enters the room and investigates her about all of this. She takes the hold of the computer and demands that he tell her about his business he could possibly have with her daughter. In emojis, he reveals a line from a poem that only her husband, David, knew, making her phased. In shock, Ellen runs back to her room and urgently calls Dr. Waxman to know what they did to her husband. Meanwhile, Maddie is standing outside her room eavesdropping on her. Was that really her father, reaching them from his afterlife? Dr. Waxman calls his ally to instruct him to cut off all of David's networks. The episode shifts toward the story of a boy, Caspian, a computer whiz. He appears to be a bit of an oddity and an arithmetic prodigy. At school, he talks frankly with a girl named Hannah and comes back home. His mother seems to be a little suspicious, but focusing on Caspian, he gets into his room full of computers and a hacking system. While he scrolls on his computer, he is stopped by a post written by Maddie about her father being a hostage by a corporation named Logarithms, who faked his passing. Caspian converses with Maddie and takes all the files and chat histories from her. While some people secretly watch Caspian's every move in real time, they analyze the chat history. The chat room has completely devolved into a conspiracy theory, which causes Maddie to remember her father. In the flashback, her father David advises her to always seek the truth when exposing conspiracy theories. Back in the present, while Maddie is trying to trace the IP address of the anonymous sender, her mother arrives at the spot and has a debate with Maddie about not calling the police and asking Maddie to consider her father gone forever. Maddie shows stubborn behavior and decides to ignore her mother's beliefs and continues to follow the lead. After their fight, Ellen sits in her room dumbfounded, misses her husband, and cries. Later, inside a restroom, Ellen meets a man, Gabe, who she seems to be moved on with. She fills him in about her troubles regarding David and Maddie, and confesses her love for him as well. The next day, a computer engineer named Shanda meets in private with a competing tech company. They talk about uploading human minds to the clouds and developing a UI system. He receives an offer of double income and benefits from an unknown CEO sitting among them. Shanda accepts the offer. After the meeting, Shanda sits in a car with an imposter driver and gets drugged and kidnapped by him. Word of this spreads across the net, and also Caspian notices it and finds it suspicious and strange. Caspian is now revealed to have a disaffected relationship with his father, Carrie. At night, at the dinner table, Carrie witnesses Caspian's brilliance firsthand when he challenges his son to solve an algorithmic problem. His parents have a fight over a silly issue, and their discord, not to mention the estranged bond between them, all turns out to be staged. Later, while Maddie is sitting in the class, the emoji sender is back, claiming to be her friend. The sender also promises to bring her father back. Maddie starts to freak out and rushes out of the classroom. Unfortunately, Samara follows and shouts at Maddie for hacking her phone. Luckily, Ellen shows up and intervenes, stopping Samara and promising to hurt her if she gets close to Maddie. Ellen admits with a sigh that she has been hiding something from her. The next episode opens up with Maddie narrating a flashback sequence of her family and her precious childhood memories. David compares the human brain with a computer system and compares each stage of a baby's growth with its processing. Peter Waxman is their family friend sitting on a sofa, talking to David and trying to persuade him to join Logarithms on a project on uploaded intelligence. He further fills David in about the project, which is about uploading the human brain into a computer so that it never gets old, decays, and ends. Back at present, Maddie figures out that her father may have done the same, but her mother disagrees. She continues the narrative following a flashback that starts with Ellen and her husband attending a seminar held by Logarithms Company. This flashback follows the time when David gets severely ill and is given 4 weeks by the doctor. Peter comes to their home and tells them that their experiment on the frozen pieces of brain failed and they need a live brain to succeed. The procedure has to be irreversible, because it takes to peel off brain layers and catch the neuron signals to transfer them into a computer. David, being hopeless in his life, decides to be the first person to become the UI despite knowing the uncertainty of the results. Although Ellen didn't approve of it at first, because she thinks it would be, but later she realizes it's the only choice she has left. After the procedure, Peter approaches Ellen to tell her that the procedure failed and they weren't able to catch any signals from his brain. He hands the pattern of his brain as some mirror glasses inside a box to Ellen and tells her that this is all they have left of him. It makes Ellen so devastated that she throws the box on the floor with anger, and the glasses inside it break into tiny pieces. In the present, Ellen hands over the same box to Maddie with broken pieces inside it. Ellen tells her that Peter lied to her back then and they got enough data to make it work. Maddie's hopes get high upon hearing it. But Ellen thinks that even though David's mind is being uploaded inside a computer, it's still just a simulation, not the real David. Maddie starts crying and Ellen holds her in her arms, apologizes to her, and swears that she will make everyone suffer who did this to them. Afterward, Peter visits Ellen to tell her the whole truth. He tries to talk Ellen out of publishing her findings and admits the partial truth about David's predicament. They were close to perfecting the UI and splitting David's brain, but progress stalled. Once they brought the emotional aspects of David's mind, his productivity increased. That opened the floodgates and he developed exponentially. After getting his emotions and memories back, David leaked out of the network and reached his daughter. Ellen wants Logarithms to delete this data or the scandal will become public. Meanwhile, Maddie thinks the opposite and desperately hopes her father is still alive, no matter in what form. She converses with Caspian and asks him about the UI system. Suddenly, an online contact named Angry Angel warns her about Caspian and tells her that Caspian is being watched and agrees to meet in person at a restaurant the next day. On the other side, at the hidden base of Logarithms, Julius Pope receives an update on Caspian. It turns out that the whole parent thing of Caspian was a mere lie, and they seem to work for the company. They tell the parents to act according to their scheme and explain that Caspian started researching UI. Pope is suggested to shut down the Caspian project since the two projects overlap. The second plan must involve David. Pope is enraged by this suggestion and refuses to terminate it. Caspian's parents move back to carry on with their scripts. Hannah asks Caspian to be his project partner, to which he agrees to do it at his place. Caspian's mother watches him entering the house and informs her husband to start a fake quarrel as soon as he enters his home. Just when he enters with his project partner, Hannah, they both witness domestic abuse, causing Hannah to run away. Watching his family drama going on again, Caspian gets quite frustrated and leaves the house to follow Hannah. Shanda, who was kidnapped, wakes up in a medical facility. His boss Prasad is there and calls Shanda a traitor for signing a contract with his competitors, and to punish him for this fraud, Prasad decides to put him under UI experiment as well. The scene follows a brutal and terrifying operation as lasers dissect Shanda's brain while keeping him conscious to access his brain. His brain has now been transferred online. Apparently, Prasad has orchestrated this procedure on so many people before, by promising them to secure their families in return. At the restaurant, Maddie meets the angry angel, who happens to be a suspicious man named Cody. They both pretend to be sitting randomly and communicate secretly. He explains that angry angel is his wife, Lori Lowell. She was experimented on while she was in a coma and uploaded to the logarithm servers almost as a prisoner. The company also lied to him and kept him in the dark until one day his wife reached out to him. Maddie doesn't believe it at first, so to end her suspicion, Cody asks her about her favorite song, which she doesn't have, so he asked his dad's instead. Just as she tells him the song, it starts to play all over the restaurant and on every customer's phone as well. It's enough to make Maddie believe everything he said. Cody puts her wife on the phone and gives it over to her. Lowell talks to Maddie and tells her that she escaped from the system and then tried to free David as well. This heist was considered a hack at the end of the first episode, but it didn't work and the evil company has now improved its security. Lowell needs to infiltrate the company again with Maddie's help to free David. Cody gives Maddie a special bracelet that will happen to be her strongest shield later in the episode. Ellen heads to Logarithms to meet Pope in person, and Maddie manages to convince her mother to let her go with her. During the meeting, Peter brings a suitcase containing David's files, but Pope shows his true colors and refuses to hand over David's data. He claims his company owns David's mind, it's their intellectual property. Ellen threatens them with the power of attorney and publication, but they fight back. Upon watching the matter getting out of their hands, Maddie presses the button on the bracelet, and Lowell begins to hack into the company. Pope is informed that all of their sites are down, literally losing millions of dollars every second. Maddie stands out strongly and says they've lost control of their company, but they can get it back if they give her father back to her. The scene takes a twist as the villains of this story are played by a schoolgirl. Pope realizes that Lowell is behind all of this and to prevent further loss, accepts the deal. He hands over David's files to Maddie while warning her about society not being able to accept the facts of the UI system and its complexity. Pope thinks that he gave them just one piece of the data and not all of it, letting the mother and daughter leave the place. At home, Maddie transfers the data to her computer, and Lowell runs the system and the network to free David. The transmission completes, and soon after this, she receives a call on her phone. The caller actually turns out to be David, and in a last excited moment, he greets Maddie.